Hey guys, it's Tony and we're back on the bench. And this afternoon, we're going to be getting into doing a reassembly service here on a quantum spinning reel. So this is the Quantum Kinetic. No, it says it here somewhere on the reel. It's got the model number down here and it says Kinetic. So, we've cleaned up all these parts. I did a separate disassembly video on this reel. It didn't really have any problems. It's just been heavily fished and, it was due for a service basically. So, we're going to get right back into it here and, we're going to start, piecing it back together. So we're going to start with our housing here, the inner, portion of the reel. So there are two bearings here. This is a 6-ball bearing reel, I believe. And one of them is down here. There's another one here that rides on the crosswind gear right here. All right, but you want to clean all this up, and so we took some WD-40. We took our time with a toothbrush and Q-tips, cleaned all this stuff out here. Okay, and really all that needs to be done here. These bearings are rolling real smoothly, so they don't need to be taken apart or anything. But we're just going to flood these bearings just with a little bit of oil. Okay, I prefer to use oil on these bearings, especially smaller ones. Grease has a tendency to block, the oil from getting into, the bearings, and, these are not sealed bearings. They just have a shield on the top. It doesn't mean that the oil won't seep in there, right? And it'll also prevent rust on the outer ring as well. Okay, so we've gone through all these parts here. We've got our pinion gear. We've got a bearing that's attached to it. Then we got a roller bearing, okay, and then a couple of pieces here, a washer and a collar, okay. So what we're going to do is simple. We're going to start with this pinion gear, and we're going to hit it up with a little bit of our Pin Precision Blue Grease here, like so. Okay, and then we've got our bearing. Once again, I'm just going to flood the top of this just with a little bit of oil. And we're going to rest that back on in position like so. Okay, and then this needs to slap back in. And it was a little hard taking this bearing out, but we got it out eventually. I think I'm going to have to kind of tap it back in here because it's just kind of a tight fit. I'll just give it some light taps all the way around. And there it goes there. Okay. So that's the first step. So make note that these 3 screws you're going to want to put back in these holes here in these positions, and that holds your main bearing in position. Okay. I got 3 of them here. And I find it's best just to hold it like that and just drop it straight in if you can. Sometimes they fall apart like that. A magnetic tip is also helpful in this situation sometimes. Turn those up. Like so. There. Then we've got our roller bearing. Okay. And, this, we basically just hit this with a little bit of, WD-40, but you don't want to lose any of those rollers, okay? I can see that there's a little bit of rust in here. It's nothing major, though, okay? So once again, we're just going to rest this in here. Now, there are teeth here that this has to line up with in order to get this right. Okay, and I'm just going to kind of gently do this and hopefully not have to mess with it too much. Get the teeth lined up just right. And in fact, what I found is you actually have to turn the roller bearings to get that to sink down in just right first, and then you can put the ring on top, I believe. So you just kind of have to work your way at it here. There we go. Okay. And I believe that there's a punch. It's hard to see on camera, but there's actually a punch here, and I think it indicates that it has to go in this position here exactly. Okay. Now we're going to take our real oil to these rollers here. Okay. And then we'll go back with the rest of these parts. So we've got a washer, and then we've got this collar. It goes back on. Okay, and that oil is going to work its way in there, but we're just going to put just a little bit more around there just for good measure. Okay. Make that nice and smooth. Okay. So now we've got this rubber brass ring that goes on top of that, and then we've got our snap ring that has to go back in position. And I mentioned this in the previous video. I highly recommend having a pair of snap ring pliers handy if you're doing this, because it'll make all the difference. In this case, I might do it the other way. That snap in there. Okay, and so that should be good to go. Okay, so now there's a few other things that we got to make note of here. We've got this plastic ramp. We want to make sure that we put that back before we do all the rest of the reassembly. All right, I'm just going to put it off to the side here for now, but we've cleaned up all these other parts here. So we got our main gear, crosswind block, okay, and then we've got our shaft. Okay, so we want to start here with the pinion gear, or the crosswind gear. And we're just going to put a little bit of blue grease on that, both top and bottom. And we're going to set that down there in position like so. Okay, so that's one step there. Now, this is kind of a combination of a few different things. I'm going to put some blue grease on our main gear here next and get that prepped and ready. But we need to put the pinion, the main gear shaft back through. But we also have to have the main gear in position as well. So we're going to get this ready here. And we're going to put a little bit of blue grease here on the outside of that as well. Okay. So we're going to get this in position first, like that. Okay, we've taken some 4-0 steel wool to this shaft. We've made it real nice and clean. So it's a nice clean surface, and we're going to take the blue grease to that, like so. And we're going to go back. And then we've got our crosswind block here to meet it at the base. Okay, we're going to do a little grease here underneath. And we're going to set that in position like so. And then we're going to line up our holes accordingly. Sometimes you got to jiggle them around a little bit. A little bit of Real X here on that set screw hole. And then we're going to go back with that set screw. Tighten that up a little bit. Okay. Okay. Now this is the part where we're going to put our ramp, this plastic ramp, and it sets in here, okay, in this position. Okay. It doesn't really snap in, but you just kind of push it in. All right, but we want to make sure that that's there and ready. when we go to put the rest of the reel back together. Okay, so now we've got a few other parts here to account for. This is one of them, and then this is another one. So we've got our bearing, okay, and we put a little bit of oil on that bearing. It spins real smoothly, okay, so there's no issues there. It's in good shape. And then we've got our outer side plate. I'm just going to clean that off a little bit. Snap back in place like that. Okay, now these two screws here are these two guys here, and I'm just going to take a little bit of oil to those holes there that they go into, and they're the same size. And once you're done with those, you can put these two back in. And remember, there's a shorter one here and a longer one that goes back here. I'm just going to do a little bead of oil here just for good measure. The longer one goes in the back, shorter one in the front. Okay. So now we've got our rotor assembly here, and we've cleaned it up, pretty good. Using some WD-40. We've taken some oil here, and also on the bail seams. And the roller here. The roller is actually turning really nice and freely, so we just hit that with a little bit of WD-40, and that'll keep it nice and lubed. And there's really no need to do much more here, really. Bail fires just fine. Okay, so gently put this back on top. Okay, and then we've got our rotor nut, and there's a bushing, a plastic bushing on the inside. You want to make sure you have that. And we're going to give this a couple of turns here. I think we said that was a 12 millimeter, if I recall correctly. And we got this capture here. Hold that in place. And a couple little drops of oil always do good here. Sometimes these screws are really difficult to work with. As you can see, this one is being a real pain. Get them started up and snug them up. Okay, should look like that. And then we can put our spacer shims and our clicker ratchet back on like so. Okay, and then don't forget down here, we've got a couple of pieces left to put on. I'm trying to remember how this went exactly. I think the shield was here, like that, and then it was held in place by this shield here. Okay, and then just a little bead of oil there will do fine. But the purpose of these shields is to protect the screws that are hiding underneath them, so that you can actually, service, the reel by getting those screws out without having to drill them out per se. That's the thinking behind it, at least. And it prevents dirt and sand and stuff from getting in the base of the reel. Okay, so that all looks good there. Okay, we're going to do a couple of quick things here. A little bit of Reel X here. And then we just want to clean this up. This is the only part that I didn't get to in the cleaning, was just cleaning up this handle here a little bit. And we'll take some 4-0 steel wool. This does have some signs of some salt spray damage on it, but it's not uncommon. And it doesn't really affect the functionality per se, so... Okay, do a little bit of oil there, and at this pivot point here, I'll keep that from rusting. And then we're going to go in with the blue grease here on the handle shaft. Slide that back in. And then last but not least, we've got our drag stack and our spool assembly. So we're going to move that on over here. So we've got our spool. We're going to hit a little bit of reel oil here on that tongue. Okay, the rest of the spool, we've cleaned up on the inside. It looks really good. And then we've got our drag stack. And it was actually very clean. No rust, no damage. And so here's our washers, and they're all in good shape. Now, the one thing about these fabric washers is you could apply just a light film of oil, real oil, to the surface. Not a lot, but just a little bit. And that'll keep that intact, for some time to come. Okay. So you do that and you're good to go. So we'll go in with the keyed washer, fabric washer, metal washer, fabric, keyed, fabric, metal, and then your snap ring that holds it all in place. Like so. Okay. And we'll slap that back on. And put our top cap back on there. Make sure that drag is working nice and smooth. I'm going to take the gloves off for this part though. Yep, it's working really good. Make sure you back off that drag when you're not using the reel. And that's a real smooth operator. Check our anti-reverse. That's working good. Yeah, it's a little better than it was. It's pretty smooth now. Bail's firing really well. So there you have it. That is the Quantum Kinetic PTi 30 spinning reel, all serviced and ready to go. And thanks again for watching. This is Tony with Back on the Bench. If you liked the video, please do give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more, please make sure you do subscribe. Hit the notification button. That way you will be getting all the updates as to when there are new videos coming out. And I will have quite a few more coming out here shortly, so stay tuned for those, and we'll see you next time.